Recording, share on screen. Boom. We're shared, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. Welcome to my workshop on zoning permits, use permits, and building permits. The difference between each and when each are used. Sound good? Okay, so the definition of success, how I see it for this workshop, is for the people learning to understand what a zoning permit is, what a use permit is, what a building permit is, how they are all used, and when each of them are needed. What's success to you guys? Anything conditional?
Learning them all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Learning how to file it.
Okay, we're not going to go too much into filing, but I think this will be super helpful. So, do it. Oh yeah, we have pen and paper is good. Okay, so zoning and use permit kind of can be very complex. In the city, they're used interchangeably. So as you know already, a zoning permit and a use permit are actually the same application, and sometimes it results in the same permit. So like I said, it's the same application, however, we got someone coming in. Hey there.
Hi.
Hey there, we started, so I'm just gonna mute you, and then if you have any questions, pop them into the chat, okay? And then we'll open it up. For discussion. All right. How can I see chats when it pops up?
No pop-up.
Okay. All right, cool. So again, like I said, zoning and use permits are used interchangeably. However, they are fundamentally different. And then I'm not gonna open up any of the city pages right now, but it's just in the presentation if you want to look at it afterward. So before I tell you, take a second and write down what is the difference between a use registration permit, a zoning permit, and a zoning use permit. Just reflect on it real quick. Take like a minute, and then we'll talk about it. Just give you a couple more seconds and we'll just talk about it real quick. Alright, so Sarah, do you want to tell me, what do you think the difference between a use permit is, a zoning permit, and a zoning use permit?
So I think a use permit is when you're changing the use of something that used to be something else. So you're changing the use. A zoning permit is, in my opinion, when you're trying to change the zone of the building or if you're subdividing something. So one thing is changing from this to that, but the actual building, not the use of it.
Got it.
And then a zoning use permit. That's tricky.
Yeah, see, it is tricky. So it took me a while to get this stuff. So we'll go on.
But yeah, I wanted to.
Oh, go ahead.
So
I want to go back.
Let's press it back. I want to see. So for the use is like if you're changing the use, like for the retail store, you change it to a restaurant or whatever. If you're changing the use of it, or if it's residential to commercial, and then the zoning permit would be like even if you're like usually it comes with a building permit. So like if you're building and you're adding an addition to your home, and you're really adding anything to the structure, you need a zoning permit.
Nice.
And then the zoning use, are you saying is that one permit?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, explain.
Okay. So like you guys are right. So a use registration permit, when you're just getting a use registration permit, that only affects how the space is being used, so like the activity going on within the space. Then a zoning permit is classified, and this is how I've classified it because it's how it makes sense. It may not be how the city like explains it, but it's how each permits are broken up when you look at them. So a zoning permit is what is actually being built or constructed, And then a zoning use permit is when you're simultaneously registering the use of a space and its construction/creation.
Got it.
So, does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. So here's just something, I put 3 examples, one of each, so you can see how they're a little bit different. So a zoning use permit, erection of a single-family dwelling with a roof deck accessed by a pilot house, that doesn't matter. And then a zoning permit for the erection of a 3rd-story addition with a roof deck. So the fundamental difference between a zoning use permit and zoning permit is in the zoning use permit, this single-family house hasn't been built yet. So the use of it has to get registered, and then the zoning for the construction has to also be simultaneously registered. So that's why a zoning use permit is like being issued here for both things. Then if you look here for this one, there's already an existing single-family dwelling, single-family structure. They're just adding a roof deck, so they just need a zoning permit because the use isn't changing. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, of course, a use permit. This one is for a retail sale of wearing apparel and accessories. So this is for a jewelry store we recently did. There's no construction being done. It's just the use was changing. So that's why it was just a use permit. So there's just a zoning permit, just a use permit, and then a zoning use permit when both are being done. So those are kind of the fundamental differences.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So if you're building, like, let's say on a new lot, and you're building a single family home, so since you're not changing, the use doesn't exist yet, so you would just need a building permit and zoning permit, like you wouldn't need a use, right?
For a new single family?
For just like if you're building new construction on a lot or something.
So that would go under zoning use, it would be both, because the structure isn't already built yet, so you're simultaneously registering the use while the zoning of the construction, the building, the parcel.
So
Because zoning affects dimensional standards, and also obviously the zoning code governs the uses of certain locations by the zoning classification. So you get a zoning permit to make sure the zoning you're using is within the zoning classification, and then the use within the zoning classification matches, and the construction matches the dimensional requirements of the zoning code.
So if it's a completely new structure, it's registered as well.
Right. Hey guys.
Hey, Alexa, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm gonna mute you though, just because I'm doing the presentation, and then we're gonna open it up.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I'm here.
How can I see chats? It will pop up. All right. So what was the last thing I said? Or you said?
Oh, so if it's a new structure, you need to register the use because it didn't previously exist.
Right. Exactly. So that's when you'll have the outcome will be as. Sorry. The outcome, I was trying to go back. The outcome will be the zoning use permit for new construction. See how it says erection of a single family dwelling, meaning a new single family dwelling? Yeah. Cool. All right. So that's zoning use, and zoning. So use registration, permit, and action. So we're gonna go through each. We already went through this. It's needed when the use within an active space is changing or when a new use is occurring. So a change of use or new use. So a change in activity. So we do these with our businesses, our tenant fit out. Sometimes if a retail store is changing into a restaurant, use change, right? If a retail store is changing into a spice shop, use change. A new business use, so like with the fashion district, this was a new mall, so it's a new business uses. And then also an increase in the number of dwelling units. So the structure already exists, but it's turning from maybe 2 units to 3 units. So you need a use permit for that. And then signs actually need zoning use permits.
Right.
And then, of course, some use permits will require a variance. Some zoning permits require a variance. Some use permits require a variance if it's not within the boundaries of the zoning code. So we do that. So zoning permit in action, new construction, of course, which we just talked about, and this includes additions to existing structures. Lot line, so the city can contradict itself sometimes because it says all new construction, but lot line relocations have no construction if you're just applying for the lot line relocation on its own. So anytime you're subdividing or consolidating a lot via a lot line relocation, you also need a zoning permit, even when there's no construction. And then demolition, and the reason for demolition is because a structure is actually going away, so that affects zoning, because zoning is affected by construction and dimensional standards. Signs need zoning permits, kind of weird, but they do. And then fences and parking, which we don't do too much of that within our company, but they still need it, just to put that out there. All right, any questions about those before we go into our little game? Okay, and then you guys can just type it into the chat if you want, the answers to these. We're just gonna play a little game. Okay, so let's play what kind of permit. Is it a zoning permit? Is it a use permit, or is it a zoning and use permit, okay? So for a new 2-family building that's being constructed, I'll give you like 20 seconds. Or not even, like 10. Ready? Okay. What do you think?
Zoning use.
Same.
Building.
Did you guys chat it? Can you guys chat just so I can see if it works? Good job, zoning use permit, you guys got it. Okay, cool. All right, next one. A restaurant is moving out and a retail clothing store is moving in.
Use.
Yeah, use.
Easy. A single-family home is demolishing the garage and building a 2-story addition in its place.
Zoning.
Zoning?
Yeah, zoning.
Zoning, good job. One large lot is being subdivided into 3 lots and 3 new construction duplexes will be built.
Yeah.
Yay, you got it. Easy.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Alright,
So the chat now the thing.
you could click.
All right, any questions about zoning and use permits? Let me just
It's Q&A.
sorry, I'm like a Zoom noob kind of. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So are they? I can't tell if anything's.
Click more. Chat.
Okay, cool. All right. Just making sure you guys haven't said anything in the chat. All right, so no questions. Let's move it on. All right, let's talk about building permits. What are some examples of when a building permit is needed? We can just talk about it real quick.
New construction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're tying it out, tenants changing. Oh,
That's use, right? So what's happening?
There's like structural, like scope of work.
Okay.
Yeah, structural, mechanical,
Okay.
architectural.
Cool. All right. Yeah. So any all new construction, of course, any demolition, most sign installations. So if it's a sign that's like a sticker, you don't need a building permit, but if it's being fastened with something, then you need a building permit. Interior, exterior changes, which is what you were talking with the tenant fit out, so alterations, repairs internally. And then also exterior changes to like facades and signs and all that kind of stuff. And then the elusive one, the change or increase in occupancy load. So going back to AJ, right? There was a change in the occupancy because the use was changing. So when use is changing, you can automatically, I think, assume the occupancy is changing too. So that then they'll need a certificate of occupancy, which if you're getting a certificate of occupancy, you have to apply for a building permit. And then the end deliverable that the client will get once the inspection happens is the certificate of occupancy.
Isn't there always technically a change in occupancy if they're doing any sort of building, even if it's an addition or like, because they could be adding like a room or something, or?
Well, Yeah, technically, yes, because all new construction needs a building permit.
Got it.
But it doesn't mean, obviously, it doesn't mean
That
the
makes
use is changing. But what happens is what a building permit is once if you write on any building permit requesting CO, you'll have to apply for it separately. So if there's already construction happening and you know you need a CO, because you always need a CO, like any new building permit we do, we should be requesting a CO every single time on the application. So like for a church project we're doing, request a CO on the application, just to be safe. But the outcome of a building permit is usually always a certificate of occupancy. And then you guys can click this, if you want to go back and check it out. So easy permits, of course, they're still building permits, but you can get an easy permit without plans. But of course, that can only happen within a very limited project scope. And I put the city's easy permit page, which has a link to the easy permit standards in there. So anytime an easy permit comes up for one of our projects, like we have to check the standards because the size of projects we do, we're likely not getting easy permits, but potentially with like single families and small scopes of work. So easy permits are over-the-counter same-day permits and have strict standards that must be met. Certificate of occupancy, the most elusive and misunderstood piece of paper in existence. So we just talked about this, but when is a CO needed again?
Occupancy change.
Yeah. New construction, additions, change in occupancy. So again, if you were just applying for new construction, you would say requesting CO on the permit application. And like I said, the CO is the product of the building permit, but the client can only get the CO once the inspector comes out. So building permit's issued, inspection happens, and then.
Oh my God.
What's up? You guys have questions? Oh, why did I just happen? So random. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So for easy permits, for instance, like, is it best practice for someone to apply, like, say it's like they're just doing cosmetic work, it's like a really small scope, is it best practice to apply for an easy permit and see if it passed or if they get approved, or should they just apply for it?
The best practice would be I'll just take you to the thing. So did you guys hear the question?
Let's see.
It's fine. I'll read it. So they asked, basically, is it a best practice to just apply for an easy permit and see if you can get through? But I don't recommend that. You just want to check the easy permit standards.
Does occupancy affect easy permits?
What do you mean?
Like, for instance, if it's vacant, or if it's occupied by the owner, if it's occupied by the tenant, does that affect your easy permit?
Yeah, I know there's a new rule around owner occupied. They're kind of coming down on easy permits.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I'm not sure because we don't do a lot of these, but I don't think they're issuing them unless it's owner occupied. But
yeah.
Commercial, obviously it's not going to be owner occupied, but so there's an easy permit standard paper that the city has, and you would just want to go through it with the client to see if they fit these standards before assuming. Okay. All right. So any other questions on COs? No? Cool. Okay, let's have a little test. Can a zoning permit and a building permit be obtained at the same time? So can a zoning permit and a building permit be applied for at the same time?
I would say yes, but practice, it's up to what the client's goals are. It might slow down the process possibly. I'm not sure. I'm not guaranteeing that.
Okay. So the answer to this is yes if a project is by right. Meaning, if you're building a single family or do anything that's by right, you can take a building permit application and a zoning permit application down to the city and apply at the same time for a same time approval. Technically, let's say there's something on the zoning permit application that's confusing, but the building permit is clear. They won't issue the building permit until the zoning permit's been approved and issued. So meaning if the zoning permit is being held up, it'll hold up the issuance of the building permit, because you can never get a building permit before a zoning permit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But you cannot get them at the same time or apply at the same time if a variance is required, and of course, a variance is any deviation from the zoning code, which means you have to go through the zoning appeals process, which takes 4, 5, 6 months. So you can't go down to L&I and submit a zoning application and a building permit application, because you have to wait 6 months to get the zoning permit, and by that time, they're gonna throw your building permit out. So, no. Anytime there's a variance, you have to get the zoning permit first. Any questions about that? Okay, we can talk about scope of work now. So scope of work comes up like all the time with what we do, and it can get a little confusing if we don't understand what everything means and like if different permits are needed for certain parts of the scope of work. So the scope of work is the type of construction work that's actually being done within the space, and it can include all, some, or combinations of demolishing the structure, any architectural design work, structural, of course, mechanical, which is like HVAC, fire suppression, electrical, plumbing, and of course there's like a ton more. And then as you've probably learned by now, certain scopes of work can all go within the single building permit application, while others need their own application submission and permit. Obviously electrical is its own permit, plumbing is its own permit, but some can be combined. And then for the one that's most important to remember is a mechanical permit scope can be applied for on a normal building permit application, but the city's actually gonna, so you apply with one application, but then you receive 2 permits and 2 permit costs. So that's why you see here a mechanical permit and a building permit. Because you can, say someone comes to us, they just need a mechanical scope, and we use a building permit to apply and get a mechanical permit. But say they have like structural, architectural, design, this, that, and mechanical, it can all go on the same permit application, but then we're gonna get a building permit and mechanical permit, 2 separate permits, 2 separate payments. Make sense? Sorry. Oh, because they're clickable. And I'm gonna send this out after, then you guys can all click on it, all of these, and see them. And then for a CO, like I said, so this was actually a client that was just moving into a space. They were a group healthcare practitioner. So the use and occupancy was changing because it was like some type of different office space before they moved in, but they weren't doing any construction. So that's what sets a building permit with construction apart from a CO application, is a certificate of occupancy without construction can be applied for, but it confuses people because you still have to apply for a building permit. And people are like, well, why do I need a building permit if there's no construction? Because that's just how it works in Philly. You have to apply with a building permit, submit plans, so they can make sure it's safe, and then the end goal is the client gets a CO. So this was group healthcare practitioner for mental health counseling, and then it says right here, description of work, certificate of occupancy only. So that's COs. Any questions? Let's play another game. Based on the scope of work, what kinds of permits are necessary? So they're demolishing a section of the building and building a 2-story addition, installing HVAC units and finishes.
Building permit, they're gonna need mechanical, they're gonna need plumbing, I believe, is HVAC, maybe. And just interior.
Yeah, definitely building mechanical.
And a zoning permit, right? Because whenever you demolish and when you add an addition, it's zoning.
Sure.
So, yep. Tenant fit out of existing space, including non-load-bearing wall partitions, lighting fixtures, and an ADA restroom.
Building permit, for sure.
Dave,
Yes.
anything else?
A
Lighting is,
Oh, electrical. I see picture of electrical.
Yep. And then a lot line relocation of one lot into 3 lots, and then building single-family homes with roof deck.
Zoning use and building.
Zoning for the lot, or
Right. So it's zoning in the building, but this is where, and I'm gonna go into phases next. So for something like this, the client, as long as what they're building is by right, and as long as the lot line relocation is by right, they can do the zoning permit for the lot line relocation and the new construction homes in one zoning permit application. We don't really do it like that because the phases are gonna be really long and drawn out. A lot of people do, like big developers, they'll do it all on one application, but some people might just do the zoning permit for the lot line relocation, then go get their plans drawn up for the creation of the house, and then go back and get a zoning use permit, zoning building permit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Which brings me to, I just wanted us to discuss project phases. So large projects that occur over a longer period of time might be broken up into different phases, which means we would have to strategically obtain permits in different phases, like we're doing with the church.
Mhm.
So, you know, if you want to give me some examples, that's fine. But the church is a great example. It's like they're doing work on one section of the church, demolishing it, doing this, this, and this, and then the next phase is they're going to go do this zoning addition. So we're going to have to get, you know, multiple rounds of permits.
Same with our client Herman, right? He's subdividing and then he's building dwellings.
Right. Exactly. But usually we'll ask the client, like, hey, just let you know, like, you can do all this in one shot, but that means you have to get your surveyor to draw up the lot line relocation survey plans, and then you got to get a design professional to do the design and architectural plans, and it's like an at least 4-month process to go through the lot line relocation, and then probably another 2 or 3 to do the other one. So it's like, depending on their goals and their budgets, smaller investors are likely going to have multiple phases to like raise money. Big developers have more resources. They're probably going to, like, if you look on a lot of the zoning appeal applications, they do it all in one shot. Lot line relocation and erection of this, and all of it's on the same thing. So just always thinking about strategically, does this make sense to do in phases, or just asking the client, you know? All right, that's it. It was pretty quick and to the point. Do you guys have any other final questions, comments, concerns? No?
no,
Easy.
makes sense.
Maybe you guys. I'm sorry, I'm not good with Zoom. Who's in there, Tree? Hey there, do you have any questions? All right. So, do you guys have any feedback for me?
I think it's definitely a little bit easier to understand, especially with the zoning use one.
Okay.
Made me think of certain clients and like, oh,
Yeah. Did that help?
Did help.
Okay.
Understand the difference, even with the scope of work and stuff too. So if anything, even if it's, what if it's just architectural, like do you need like a building permit still?
Yeah.
So
That's where the easy permit might come in.
So
If it's
whether it's architectural, structural, mechanical, it doesn't matter, you always need a building.
building permit.
So the only time you don't need a building permit for any new construction or building is like if the scope of work is so small that they could get an easy permit, right?
Correct. Which we've done maybe 2 easy permits in 3 years. They're not happening really.
Okay,
Yeah. All right.
cool.
Anything else? Sweet. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing this, then I'll email these to the participants, and then we'll have that. So stop share, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure.
And then
Stop.
stop recording.